I am Nelson Mandela, and in the crisp dawn of 1957, a man named Elias Nkosi walked into our law office in Johannesburg, his steps heavy with purpose, but his eyes shadowed with worry. The air in our small office was thick with the scent of dust and worn paper, the city's restless hum filtering through the thin walls like a distant heartbeat. Elias, a shopkeeper and community leader from Sophiatown, stood tall, his presence commanding despite the weight of the charges against him. He had organized a bus boycott to protest the soaring fares that bled black workers dry, a bold act of defiance that had shaken the apartheid regime. Now he faced charges of public violence and incitement under the Riotous Assemblies Act, with the threat of prison looming over him and his family. His story was a spark in the tinder of our struggle, a call to fight not just for Elias, but for the right of our people to stand together against injustice. I took his case with a fire in my heart, knowing it was a chance to strike at the core of apartheid's cruelty. Sophiatown was the beating heart of Black Johannesburg, a place where jazz spilled from shebeens, where laughter and defiance danced in the streets despite the shadow of apartheid. But life there was a daily battle. The bus fares, set by white-owned companies, had risen sharply. Devouring wage is already stretched thin by poverty. For workers like those in Elias' community, the choice was stark: pay the fare and go hungry, or walk miles to factories under the scorching sun. Elias, a shopkeeper with a modest store selling tea, sugar, and hope, saw the pain in his neighbors' eyes. He rallied them to boycott the buses, organizing carpools and marches, their voices rising in songs of freedom as they walked together. For weeks, Sophiatown streets were alive with solidarity, the buses nearly empty, a powerful rebuke to a system that profited from their suffering. But the authorities struck back. One evening, as the boycott swelled, police stormed a community meeting, their batons flashing under the streetlights. Elias was arrested, his wrists bound as his neighbors shouted in protest. The charge of public violence was a lie, a twisted use of the Riotous Assemblies Act to silence resistance. Elias' wife, a nurse, and their 2 daughters faced a future without him if he was convicted. "I did it for them," he told me, his voice steady but soft, "for all of us who can't keep paying to breathe in our own land." His words echoed the pulse of our struggle, and I knew this case was more than a defense, it was a battle for the soul of our people. Oliver Tambo and I threw ourselves into Elias' case, our resolve as unyielding as the Sophiatown spirit. The Riotous Assemblies Act was a blunt weapon, used to crush any collective action, but we saw a chance to turn it against itself. We worked late into the night, our office lit by a single lamp, the clatter of our typewriter a war cry against the silence of oppression. We gathered testimonies from boycott participants, mothers who walked miles to save their children's meals, workers who shared bicycles to reach their jobs, elders who saw Elias as their voice. We argued that the boycott was no violence but a peaceful stand, a demand for fairness in a system that thrived on exploitation. The preparation was a marathon of hope and grit. We studied police reports, exposing their exaggerations, and collected newspaper clippings that praised the boycott's discipline. I thought of the ANC Defiance campaign, how it had taught us the power of collective action, and saw Elias' boycott as its kin. Every affidavit we filed, every argument we honed, was a brick in the wall of resistance we were building. I felt the weight of Elias' Trusthi's steady gaze, his community's hope, and it fueled me through the long nights. The trial day broke with a golden haze over Johannesburg, but the courthouse loomed like a fortress of white power, its walls steeped in the arrogance of apartheid. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of polished wood and the weight of judgment. The gallery was a sea of faces, Sophiatown residents, ANC comrades, and workers who had walked in solidarity with Elias. The prosecutor, a man with a sharp voice and sharper disdain, painted Elias as a rouser, a threat to public order. He waved police statements, claiming the boycott had sparked chaos, though the streets had been peaceful. His words were a venom meant to poison the truth. When I rose to speak, my heart thundered, but my voice was a steady flame. I held up a bus ticket, its price a symbol of exploitation, and told Elias' story. "This is no criminal," I declared. "This is a man who rallied his community to walk together, to sing together, to demand fairness in a land that denies it." I spoke of the mothers who went hungry to pay fares, the workers who collapsed from exhaustion after walking miles, the children who watched their parents' dreams erode. I challenged the riotous Assemblies Act, calling it a tool to crush solidarity, a law that feared the power of a united people. To punish Elias Nkosi, I concluded, is to punish a man for leading his people to justice. Let us judge the system, not the man. The gallery erupted in a low hum, a wave of defiance, and I saw pride in Elias' eyes. The judge, a stern figure with a face like granite, listened impassively. His verdict was a blow, guilty. Elias was sentenced to 4 months in prison, his shop ordered closed. The gallery gasped, a tide of sorrow and anger, but Elias stood tall, his gaze unyielding. As the guards led him away, he raised a clenched fist, and the crowd answered with a freedom song, its notes shaking the courtroom's walls. I felt a surge of resolve. His spirit was unbroken, and so was ours. The loss was bitter, but it kindled a greater fire. Elias' boycott became a legend in Sophiatown, its story carried by word of mouth and ANC pamphlets. Other townships took up the call, organizing their own boycotts, their streets alive with marching feet and freedom songs. The empty buses became a symbol, a crack in Apartheid's armor, drawing international eyes to our struggle. Elias' sacrifice inspired a new wave of resistance, with communities across Johannesburg refusing to bow to unjust fares. The trial's publicity exposed the regime's fear of unity, strengthening our movement's resolve. In the quiet of our office after the trial, the city's hum a faint echo, I sat with Oliver, reflecting on what we had achieved. Elias' fist, his community's songs, their unyielding spirit were our fuel. We had not saved him from prison, but we had lit a flame that would burn on. The struggle for justice was a long road, but every stand, every song, brought us closer to freedom. To you who hear this tale, let Elias' courage stir your soul. Whatever burdens you bear, whatever injustice you face, stand together and raise your voice. Your unity, like his, is a fire that can shake the strongest chains. Let it burn bright, and let it light the way to a world where all are free.